Thanks so much for that New Zealand perspective on glyphosate. As we move on, a nod to two more of today's sponsors, Hebert Cabinets and ICI. Well, we're going to stay in New Zealand for our next presentation, and for this one, we're going to have a farmer-researcher duo address the race for the world record wheat yield. David Weith is from the South Canterbury region of New Zealand. With university education in both agriculture and farm management, he spent time in the ag chemical industry going all the way back to 1983. Currently, he's working for Bayer CropScience. David has logged nearly 4 decades working with New Zealand's arable industry, and he's got a real passion for high-yielding cereal crops and for helping farmers improve their yields. David has provided several farmers with agronomic advice which helped them break yield records, including Eric Watson when he broke the Guinness World Record for the highest wheat yield of 16.791 tons per hectare, which is 249.68 bushels per acre in 2017. And again when Eric achieved 17.398 tons per hectare in 2020. We're so fortunate today to also have Eric Watson joining David with us. Now, Eric was born and bred in mid-Canterbury on a border dike irrigated mixed sheep and crop farm on light stony soils at Ealing on the north bank of the Rangiata River. Eric has farmed with his wife Maxine since 1973, and they now farm in Wakanui with 490 hectares of fully arable spray-irrigated property on some of the best soils in Canterbury. Eric has a thorough knowledge of all aspects of cropping, gained from 50 years working in the industry alongside farm advisors and agronomists for the various companies that they grow for. He's hosted many crop trials and follows closely the work of the Foundation for Arable Research. He also likes to visit farms, research institutes, and expos in the UK, Europe, and the US. Along with world records, he's received numerous awards. So David and Eric will explore some history about world wheat yields, how all of this started, and the background details about the attempt. And they'll also share some details about the big world record harvest day.
David Weith from Bayer CropScience in New Zealand, and beside me is Eric Watson, the current Guinness World Record holder for wheat yield, here in grey New Zealand, actually. Thanks for having us. So a little bit of history about the Guinness World Records and why it's so prestigious is that it's something that's pretty hard to get. You'll see on the screen there's been quite a rivalry between New Zealand and the UK since 1981. And I guess just the really interesting thing is the progression from 1981 now to 2020. It's a substantial lift in yield. So just to understand what Guinness is all about, so to claim a Guinness World Record, we have to set out right from the word go to break that record. So that's from the day that we sow the field. The paddock has to be certified by a registered surveyor, so the certified area, and it has to be approved by Guinness before you make a start, basically. So there's none of this, this looks like a really good field of wheat, let's put that into the Guinness World Record. Basically, you have to set out with intentions to break a world record. I guess the important thing is can't go we've got to use all our inputs based on the regulations of the country that you're in. So we can't, for instance, overuse pesticides or fertilizers or whatever, and we have to fall within good agricultural practice. The harvest the crop is also looked at by independent people through the year, and we have to prove that field is the same field that we've harvested from. On the day of the harvest, it's a total and utter rigmarole, which involves about 15 people. And part of that's just to make sure that we haven't cheated, that we haven't got a truckload of of wheat out of another field or whatever. So we video the whole harvest. We have cameras in the field. We have cameras at the weighbridge. We have a couple of JPs, Justice of the Pieces, and we also use an independent company to verify the weights and scales. So that's an international company that does that for us.
And he has to be a certified auditor to do that process as well. So
yeah, so it's a real rigmarole. So how did it start? Well, it started when Warren and Joy Darling broke the barley world record back in 2015, and I always thought that Eric was really capable of breaking a world record, and that's where it started back in 2015-16. So in 2015-16, we actually broke the New Zealand record, but we didn't submit to Guinness because the world record that was held at that time was slightly above us. So in 2016-17, we had another attempt. The record was held by a gentleman by the name of Rod Smith at 16.52 tonne, and we did 16.791. So Rod held the world record, I think, for 4 months, which was it's a little bit disappointing for him. I guess you could take over here. You weren't very satisfied, were you? You thought you could do better.
well, yeah, I always felt we could do better. I mean, the yield was, it was okay. It was reasonably substantial, and the varieties keep changing. Varieties keep improving. So I just felt that there was, further gains to be made and big gains to be made. So the next attempt was in 2019-20 season, and we broke our own record with 17.39 tonne, which was actually 600 odd kilos per hectare difference. So it was quite a substantial increase in yield compared to the previous record. So, and that was partly related to variety and very good growing conditions for that season. So, and that's where the yield still stands today.
Is there a reason you didn't submit any records, or you didn't try for any records between 2017 and 2019?
Well, we had actually registered for attempts, but the season wasn't conducive to record. So yeah, we know before harvest whether it's going to make it or not. So there's no further processes involved at all. So it's just forgotten about, and we just carry on harvesting. And it was the same last season. It was just one of those seasons that's not conducive to high yield. So, and that's the in between years.
So the crops can look $1 million, but if they're not going to weigh, then no point in continuing. So we do some pre-harvest cuts and put those through a stationary trials combine. We have a pretty good idea of what the yield's going to be, and we've been very close with our cut yields. We're out by maybe 15%, so it gives us a pretty good idea where we're going. But the season is very important. So you can talk about your farm, because I think it's
well, our farm is located approximately starts at 15 kilometres from the sea on the 43rd parallel, and we're around about 40 to 50, 55 metres above sea level. And we don't get climatic extremes, although we can get some hot weather during January, February. But we don't get we get days over 30 degrees, which can be detrimental to yield, but they're normally when the sort of yield process or building yield process is finished. So, and that's a big benefit to us. We get the cool air off the sea. Well, it has a cooling effect, I should say. And it also gives us dewy nights, which is very good for rainfall, and that's what we need. We need nice sunny days and up to 25, 26 degrees, and then cool nights with heavy dews. It sort of helps the crop recover. And I think the cool air with the sea, whether it may assist with some disease control, but it can be conducive to diseases as well. So it has a sort of two-edge effect in some respects. Rainfall averaging around about 620 millimetres, and it's very, very variable in Canterbury. It's never consistent. I mean, we've already had 620 millimetres this year. We had a very dry January, February early on, right through to April. Then we got a huge dollop of rain in May, right through winter. And subsequently, early September, early October were dry, but we've But this year it's sort of been a bit wet again. Yeah, we do normally get reasonably warm summer conditions, as I said, ideal for crops and pollination harvest. And also I think we've got good soils with a good rotation. I mean, that certainly helps us. You know, we grow wheat about every third year in our rotation, so we never grow second wheats. In the intervening years, it could go to a ryegrass crop for seed or a vegetable crop for seed, so or peas or something like that. So yeah, we have got that very good crop rotation.
Awesome.
Also, New Zealand's got very clean, clear skies. We get a lot of UV. And I think solar radiation is really important here.
Yeah, and that's crucial for building high yields, is that solar radiation. Yeah, the soil's a Wakanui silk loam. It's a very nice soil, reasonably easy to work. We have got more difficult soils on the farm. We've got some lighter soils as well. The previous crop in the field before that wheat was pak joy or bok joy for seed production. We've been grid soil testing for many years, probably about 12 years now, and that was a soil sample taken before cultivation to enable us to spread to the you know, what the grid soil sampling was telling us. Minimising cultivation, we don't direct seed any wheat. We do direct seed the odd crop, but wheat always is drilled after approximately one pass with a cultivation, and that's made to conserve soil structure or to help conserve soil structure and moisture. Well, often in the autumn, moisture is not an issue for us. And also we do deep soil end test before we apply any nitrogen in the late winter, early spring, so we know how much soil reserve we've got of nitrogen, and that helps us with the amount of nitrogen we apply. Sowing rate and seed placement within the row are crucial, and we've sort of been constantly looking at that. Yeah, precision drilling might be the next option, but nobody's really made a precision drill to suit the conditions that we've got and the speed that we'd like to travel with in the area we've got to cover, because we've got a very short sowing window. Row spacing, we're on around about 150, 15 centimetre row spacing, 150 mil row spacing. And yeah, sowing speed is a bit crucial, and depth is also crucial, and I get hounded by that, this guy here, for going too fast. Weed control is crucial for us. We do have, you know, some of the previous crops can be weeds, like some of the brassicas we're growing, so and also grass weeds. We're very mindful of grass weed control as well. Aphid control for barley yellow dwarf virus is very necessary in this, and it seems to be getting worse with climate change. Our winters are a lot warmer. We do not get the aphid decline in the winter these days that perhaps we used to get, so we are applying a lot of insecticides once the crop has emerged up to about growth stage 2021. After that, we start applying insecticides possibly every 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Disease control later on is crucial. We are subject to a number of diseases. We'll go into that a bit later. Controlling tiller numbers, well, we were always told that to get the maximum yield we needed 600 ears per metre square at harvest time, but now we're up to about 1200. And as somebody said to me a while ago, you're rewriting the rule books. I'm not sure on that.
And probably this year, and you know, the photos that I sent you the other day, we're probably close to 1500 this year. So yeah, we've got to try things.
Yeah.
And keeping the crop standing is absolutely vital. We cannot afford lodging, so we put on the maximum amount of plant growth regulators that we're allowed to use that are on the label. So yeah, and we're very mindful of getting them on at the right time, because timing is also crucial with getting those on. So, and that is very important, because you know, there are even, I've seen the odd wheat crop now that's lodged already, and we're not even at grain fill yet. So. Yeah,
so PGRs are giving us a lot of benefit. They're regulating the crop, so it's all nice and even, and that helps us with our timings with fungicides. It helps with harvest, making sure it's all coming in at the same time. The benefits are huge, and keeping it standing up as well, and good straw strength. And we don't want tall crops. We want them to grow grain, not straw. We don't get paid for straw. So. Yeah.
And I've made the decision to use liquid nitrogen a number of years after that first record. We could see stripping with our solid urea spreading. We were trying to spread to 32 metres. You need virtually no wind, and Canterbury there's always a bit of wind at some stage during the day. So, and our urea quality is not good, inconsistent. So we made the decision to move to liquid, and now that's applied through my sprayer at 48 metres. So, and that's made a huge difference to the crops. We do not get any stripping in any of our crops on the farm at all because of that factor. Although you've got to be very careful applying with it not to burn it. So, and that's crucial. You don't want to burn, especially flag leaf.
And one of the things we worked out is, most of the solid fertilizers are coming from the other side of the world, and by the time they get to here, which is probably the furthest away from the factories, it's being handled up to 11 times, so it's getting smashed to bits. Augers, trucks, loaders, whatever. So that's why it's not wonderful. Also, the biggest customer is a dairy farmer here, not an arable farmer. So that's why we've gone that way.
Our base fertilisers are applied pre-sowing in relation to the soil test, but we do apply potash in the spring, and that's actually put on by ear because we cannot afford to put any tram lines through the crop, any extra tram lines through the crop, because we can't spread potash to 48 metres, so that's applied by ear. And also, if we're necessary, we'll apply kieserite if we're short of magnesium. And all those decisions are made by tissue testing, and also liquid trace elements are applied during the growing season, but it's all done with in relation to the tissue testing results that we get. Or we know we're short of manganese, we can be short of zinc, which is starting to show up more, and magnesium is another one that we're getting a bit short of.
It isn't all about nitrogen, it's about getting balance, and that's what it's all about. So making sure the crop's in balance, doesn't need for anything is what is our goal, really. Do you want to talk about the irrigation management?
Yeah, all the irrigation is all our fields have neutron probes in to tell us the soil moisture levels, and the wheat's the same. And that all irrigation decisions are made on what the neutron probes are telling us whether the crop's under stress. And that last record attempt, the crop did get slightly under stress for 3 or 4 days before we got back to it with the irrigator, but I don't think it suffered. I mean, we'll never know, but yeah, and that's just one of those things with if it gets dry, our return period can be a bit long, but so yeah, irrigation management, and crucial not to water the crop as well.
So sowing date and rate, we've got a sweet spot. We're growing basically European feed wheats, and they do require vernalisation, but they're not like your Canadian winter wheats that require a non-growing period. All they require is those cool conditions for vernalisation. And we know our trigger date here is mid-April to get the stuff in the ground. Sowing rate, yeah, pretty controversial, but we're compared with other record holders, we're about a quarter of the seed rate that they're using. We want each plant to work hard and have plenty of tillers. We want light interception down into the canopy. We want to be able to get down into the canopy with our fungicides and our growth regs and our insecticides. We don't want them so thick that they're competing against each other. So yep, that's important. PGR timing, we have a two-pass strategy. Just getting those timings right, it sets these crops up, and as you've seen in those photos, they're beautiful and even. That's what we're trying to achieve. You want to talk about the liquid N?
Yeah, I think we've mostly covered it over the liquid N, and I mean, it does take a bit more work for us. We've got to go to the crop more often because we're only applying around about 50 to 60 kilograms of actual N at a time. And most of it's in the form of liquid urea, although we do use some liquid ammonium sulfate to give the crop the sulfur requirements as well. And that's normally put on with our first pass. Normally we start round about growth stage 32 if the crop's not too thin, but if it's thinner, we'll come in early, and if it's needing nitrogen earlier, we'll come in earlier. A lot of that's based on the test results from what's in the soil. So our program is pretty much based all on that, to not to overdose. And we're finding we're only using around about 300 to 310 kilograms a hectare of nitrogen, and that goes right through after growth stage 39.
And when you compare that with a lot of these other world record holders, we're miles down on what they've been using. It's not about N, and we feel that too much N is almost toxic to the crop. So it's not like there's a line there that you go past. You've got to think about what you're doing, and we think overdosing is toxic, but also sustainability. And I think Eric's world record is probably the most sustainable Guinness World Record or wheat record. And we surround ourselves with really good people, so we've got a really good access to a really good lab for tissue testing. We're using Yara, Paul Johnson from Yara, who's been real key in all these attempts. So yeah, we take his advice a lot on the nutrition, and we're getting pretty good at it. Yeah. Irrigation timing, all based on the probes, and harvest timing. You just can't leave these big crops sitting out there all day, but we've got to harvest them at 15%.
A maximum of 16%. We're not allowed to harvest over 16% for Guinness.
Yeah. So that dictates when we harvest. So this is a topic that we have revisited a lot. So just good seed to soil, I think, is the answer here. Getting the crop in the ground and getting good soil contact, not rushing the crop into the ground. If it requires an extra bit of titivating to get that seed bed right, then we'll do it. We want every plant to do its job. We want them all even. We want them all to come up at the same time. And the only way to do that really is to make sure that every seed strikes at the same time. So that may mean that if we need to irrigate, we'll irrigate to get that strike. But it gives us some additional aids, which is these seed drills work much better with a good seed bed, particularly as you can see in the photo. That's Eric's new drill, which is a Bednar. It's about as close as we could find to a precision drill, isn't it?
Well, getting that way.
Yeah. So it aids the drill, how well the drill works. It helps with our insect pest control because we do have some soil-borne insect pests. It's also helping us with weed management with our pre-em herbicides. It also breaks that green bridge. So the green bridge is important for pests and disease.
What are some ways that you can ensure you've set up a good seed bed?
Well, I do all the cultivation myself, so I just continuously look at what's happening behind the cultivator. And normally in the autumn, it's not too difficult to get it through one pass. So before we drill, I pull a cultivator that's got discs, tines, which we put in just to eliminate any low-level compaction. And then another set of discs to try and incorporate any residue that's there, plus a press. I pull a press behind that, which confirms it and consolidates it a bit. And then the final pass is done with another press, a rubber type press as well, or roller, just to firm the seed bed. And I think that makes the difference. And also the drill does some cultivation as well. The newer drill's got tyres on the front, tyre packer on the front of it as well. So that firms up the seed bed just to get that good seed to soil contact. So we can get away with, if it's not too dry, a bit more cloudy. But if it's very dry like this last autumn, we find we've got to have the seed bed finer than what we normally would. And I think we're tending to run with that for wheat at this stage, just to get it a bit finer, which also helps with that weed control or post-drilling pre-emerge herbicide application.
Nice.
Yeah, critical that the crop has no competition right from the day it comes up.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Nice. What kind of technology do you use in your attempts?
Well, as I said, we've got a precision soil testing and hectare grids. We've done it every 2 years for the last 6 years. We're due to do it again this coming autumn. I'm not sure we'll extend it for another year, 3 years, and that's made a huge difference to the taking the variability out of the crop. And that's what we found between this last record and the previous record. There was more variability in the yield map on the combine with the crop. So this year we've taken some of that out. And in the intervening years where we don't precision soil test, we'll also do soil, our base fertilizer is done on soil maps off the combine, yield maps off the combine. So that's where we get the variable rate lime and phosphate, and also we've been variable rating some potash as well. Some of the irrigators, not over this crop, but some of the irrigators have got variable rate technology on them, which is a product that was developed in New Zealand, but now Lindsay Corporation of the US have bought that. They've owned that for a number of years. They're the Zomatic owners. So yeah, that's variable rate irrigation, which enables us to irrigate to soil types, and the whole farm's been EM mapped to give us a base to run our variable rate irrigation off as well, and also the Neutron Probe moisture sensors help us. I've been using tracks for a number of years, or tractors for many years, to try and eliminate some of the compaction, and I've also gone to tracks on the combine, which helps, especially in the wet season, although we don't tend to get too wet at harvest time. 48 metre sprayer, which has all got GPS and RTK guidance. All the tractors have got guidance, the combine's got guidance on it, and the sprayer's got auto shutdown every 1.5 metre section. I haven't gone to variable rate nitrogen spreading. I think the cost of the hardware is phenomenal at this stage until that gets cheaper. Yeah, we may look at that in future years. I don't know.
It's coming.
Yes, possibly.
We can see it.
And for the nitrogen spreading, or the application, liquid nitrogen application, we'll be using dribble bars, Schaefer stream bars, or dribble bars, whatever you like to call them. So yeah. Well, we find irrigation is critical. The growing season rainfall for that record crop between the 1st of April and the 31st of January was 548 millimetres, and it had 4 applications of water. You'll see there on the screen of 25, 45, 45 and 25 millimetres. That's all based on Neutron Probe monitoring, so we know when to irrigate and when not to irrigate.
So here we are in December this year, and we've done one pass with the irrigator, I think, about a month ago.
3 weeks ago.
And we've had since then 120 mils of rain. Our annual rainfall right now is sitting at about 680 millimetres. We were just talking about it this morning. It's unlikely that we're going to need to irrigate this year's crop again. Yeah. We'll get right through grain fill, I think. So, yeah.
Do you notice any impact on the yield when you have to irrigate more or less?
No, not necessarily, I don't think. And I think, of course, in a dry year, the yield will go up substantially. We've got the odd dry land corner in some fields, not very many. So, yeah, it's pretty much, it's always hard to tell, but you do notice an increase in yield, and it certainly helps. And some of the other crops we grow on the farm, we would not get those crops to grow under contract without irrigation. Like, we've got a lot of vegetable seeds in this year, a lot of spinach, and we wouldn't get that area of spinach to grow for seed if we did not have that, irrigation. So
the one little debatable point we have is, and it happens every season, particularly when it's dry, is when do we stop irrigating? And there's not a heck of a lot of information in the world about that. When do you stop watering wheat? For grain fill. When does grain fill end? When should you stop watering? But one thing that we have seen is that if you waterlog the soil here late in January, you kill the crop, and that's a no-go really. But we've got we did a lot of research, and there's a bit of information out of Israel about irrigating wheat, so we're following that strategy a little bit. But yeah, interesting point. We know that wheat is a gross feeder of phosphate and potassium. We need the sulfur. Nitrogen, we know there's some benefits there, but everything's about balance, and that's what we're trying to do. So, there's our figures from 1920. Everything's disclosed. I don't think there's anything in there that's excessive. You know, we haven't overdosed. And in fact, you know, the question is if we increase the amount of P and K that we apply, and maybe S is the gains. But, you know, I think we're heading into the same as you guys are with the price of fertiliser going through the roof. It's, you know, less is best and utilising what we can of it. Trace elements have become really important to us, and we've noticed some big gains because basically, you know, a lot of those trace elements are helping the plant to, one, handle stress, but two, to, you know, use that nitrogen or use that P and K that we're applying. So keeping everything in balance is really important. And as Eric's alluded to, we do have zinc and manganese deficiency that we know is here. We're trying to make sure the crop never gets into stress, that it's got something, that everything is provided, nothing goes into deficit.
There's been quite a bit of research done here in New Zealand about the amount of nitrogen a wheat crop requires, and there's been shown to be no benefit over approximately 300 kilograms of applied nitrogen per hectare. We generally were told that wheat needs around about between 22 and 25 kilograms of nitrogen per tonne of grain yield. And a lot of that has to come from the soil. And we know if the soil hasn't got a big supply of nitrogen, you'll never get the top yields out of wheat, because I think if in a stress period, the crop will pick up some nitrogen from the soil. So the nitrogen in the soil, that previous crop was 46 kilograms per hectare. Now that is taken by a soil test. It is what's available at the time. It's the mineralisation. We don't know what's going to happen, and that's the big one for us. We just don't know the mineralisation, and we are getting good mineralisation on these soils. We, you know, reasonably organic matter for fully arable production. And the nitrogen on this crop use was 19.9 kilograms per tonne of grain yield, which to me is quite low, you know, compared to what we've been told. And I mean, probably some of that nitrogen is, maybe it's used more, but we don't know what's coming from the soil. The nitrogen removed in the grain that was tested is 313 kilograms a hectare. So we know that that's what's, and some of that has to come from the soil and what's available in the soil. So, and we applied enough nitrogen, it worked out 18 kilograms per tonne. So that's, quite a low rate to what we've, often been told. But, and I think, we've got this mineralisation going on in the soils, and there are tests becoming available here to show us what is supposedly available through the growing season, but they're a bit inaccurate at this stage, so we're not relying on that.
But that 90% utilisation is, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, that's a good thing to have and be able to show the sustainability.
Oh, absolutely. So on the topic of sustainability, you talked about the amount of work that goes into protecting the crop. Do you have difficulty protecting the crop from weeds, insects, and pests?
Not really, no. So on your screen now, you'll see our program, but basically, we've 3 herbicides. Our targets are broadleaf and grass weeds. So we do have issues with grass weeds from previous crops. We do have the odd wild oat, although if they poke their head up around here, they're pretty endangered. Barley yellow dwarf virus for us is a major problem. We can end up with, we know that if you let it go, a 30% reduction in yield. So we're very conscious of that. That crop had 5. We mixed them up a bit. We're using different chemistry for every application so that we don't get any resistance. We're also trying to look after our beneficials, particularly later in the season. We're trying to make sure that we're looking after our ladybirds. In fact, we've just been out in paddock of spinach here, and the ladybird population is ridiculous. It's incredible. So, we're very conscious of our lacewings and, everything else that's helping us control that population of aphids. But I think the thing that we understand is that when do you start and when do you stop? So we're using our seed treatment, we're using neonicotinoid insecticides on our seed, which we're allowed to do. A lot of around the world, they're now being banned, but here we're getting really good early protection. And then we've got a fairly robust program going through the season of 5, but maybe we stop too soon, maybe we should be continuing on, but basically we get to timing 2, which is Zelox 49, and we stop. We did do a late one a few years ago just to reduce the population that was in the crop. We weren't worried about virus, just the number of aphids that were in the crop and what they're doing on sap. Plant growth regs, I think we've hounded that to death. I think you guys are just embracing growth regs on your crops in Canada. I've listened to Weith Pete talking about the use of growth regs, and I think they could be a game changer for you guys. 5 fungicides, our 2 key diseases, Septoria, Septoria leaf blotch, and our rust species, both yellow rust, and also we have really bad brown rust, which is our late disease. But if you've got a really good program for Septoria, then you easily control rust. We start with a T0 or a T0 as as the timing, which is basically anything before GS29. We do start early. We are concerned about some stem-based disease, sharp eye spot, fusarium in the base. We do get that because we've got, particularly fusarium, because of a big grass program. Grasses carry these diseases. T1 is all about Septoria control and getting that right. We've got wonderful chemistry here that you guys haven't got. For instance, SDHI chemistry, which I think you guys are just getting, but they've been a real bonus for us. They're helping with greening. They're keeping the crop greener for longer. They're very good at disease control. So there's a couple of those in our program at T2 and T3. We're also using the strobilurins still for rust control. They're working very well. We do a T4, which for us here will be probably next week here in New Zealand, December, just really for grain quality. So our grain quality is important. We need that grain weight.
And also to keep the leaf as green as long as we can, just to enhance that yield, because the theory is every day you keep the leaf green for grain fill is another 200 kilograms a hectare. So that's paramount to try and keep that green
as long
leaf
as possible.
Yeah.
And SDHIs bring that, but also that T4, which traditionally isn't done a lot here in New Zealand. It is, but season to season. But we've found it's just you just do it. It's not expensive, but it's giving us huge benefits. So yeah, I've done 3 of these, and they're not getting any less stressful. And Guinness, of course, throw different rules at us every year, and the benefit of Guinness is they're oversighting. They're looking at everything. It's a great system, but by God, they drive us absolutely nuts with rules. For instance, our volunteers can work no longer than 2 hours, then have to have a break. So we've got to have enough people on the ground so that there's always somebody out having a rest. I guess part of that's you've probably got some guy who's doing a Guinness World Record of pogo sticking who's going to do 48 hours, and you've got some poor blighter sitting there watching him for whereas our harvest is 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours. It's 8 hectares, 20 acres. We can chew through that 4 to 5 hours if we get going. So yeah, that's all part of it. So we have to surround ourselves with lots of people. We have to have independent adjudicators who are justices of the peace. We've got to have 2 of those because one's always got to be at the storage site and one in the field. SGS, who are an international adjudicator company, we use. They're wonderful. They do a great job. They do all our weighing. They do all the moisture. They verify. what comes in to the yard and what is weighed into our storage. We have to have a weighbridge on site that's certified. Oh gosh, it just goes on and on. But
Yeah.
15 people, a whole day, really of mucking around, making sure that it's the right day. We've had a couple of false starts where we've got all these people in, and then we put the combine in the field, and then the weather changes, or we can't get the moisture right, or whatever else. So we've got a very understanding team. A lot of them work for Bayer here, but some of them are also independent who come in and help us. So yeah, Monday the 17th of February seems to be the date. Our previous world record was harvested on the same day in the same field.
Nice.
So there's something about that field and something about that date. Like to say we celebrated, but we didn't actually, because we were absolutely stuffed by the time it's all over. But so then we lodged the information with Guinness, and then that takes around about 6 weeks for them to verify that we've got the world record. It costs money. It's very expensive. It's not cheap. I don't think a farmer could do this on his own now. So the might of Bayer behind us helps, and other sponsors where possible. So yeah, that's where we're at, really.
Well, I think you'll see some variability in that yield, Matt. On the line with the lower yield up through the strip up the middle is probably an irrigator run. I mean, because the irrigator still has to go through there, and also coincides with a tram line from the sprayer. So that's, and you can see lower yields in that area, and you can see some extremely high yields, but we need the high yields to compensate for the lower yields. So, but there is less variability in that map compared to other years. So. And you can see yields up to 21 or nearly 22 tonne in spots, and I mean that's a phenomenal yield. I mean, we'd like to think we'd get that over the whole field, but that's in the future. So, as long as we can get around that 19 tonne consistent, it's probably a good idea.
So that's what it's all about, is getting that variability and and getting your average up, and that's what this is all about. So you'll notice there's very little down below 10 tonne. So that's what this is all about. Is you need as much as possible over 20 tonne to get that average up. So unlike the American corn records and soybean records, which are over 1.5 acres or 2 acres, this is 20 acre,
8 hectares here.
8 hectare attempt. So it's incredible when you think that you can get that average up over 8 hectares, and that's what we're working on, is taking those variabilities out, and we're starting to see that difference. It's starting to happen.
Is there anything you wanted to go over with the world record details?
Well, effectively what we're just disclosing is the crop and the crop facts. Couple of things: the sowing rate, you'll notice 73 kgs to the hectare, which is pretty light. Plant numbers are pretty substantial. Tiller numbers, 10 tillers per plant average. We've seen plants that have sat out on their own, out here and had 24, 25 tillers. So that's the potential of the crop. It's just getting that recipe of plant numbers and tiller numbers right, to get maximise yield. The grain weight is pretty substantial.
I think that grain weight, that test weight of grain weight per litre, that is crucial, and that's governed by variety to a certain extent, but it's also governed by the weather, which we'd like to see in the next 6 weeks, because we need that. As I said, we need those sunny days where we trap a lot of solar radiation, and the cooler nights. But yeah, and that's one we have some influence on, but we don't have total influence over.
And I guess just the yield monitor picture there with 20 tonne on it, sitting in the combine, we're seeing, and we know that yield monitor is pretty accurate. I mean, it's 2%, isn't it? Something like that, yes. About 2% compared with the weighbridge. We know that there's areas in those fields that were around 22 to 23 tonne. So it's just getting the whole field to do that. That's the secret. We've got involved with the Yield Enhancement Network in the UK, and I think there's a Yield Enhancement group in Canada, which I suggest people should join because you'll learn a lot in your own country, and it's all about sustainability and percentage of potential yield versus all your inputs. And we submitted all our data in 2020, and they've come back and said, well, you're at 69.4% of your total potential yield at 17.398 tonne. So, you know, that puts you right up there at 25 tonne. So that's the benchmark, I guess, for where we've got to be.
Are the figures accurate? I mean, you know, that's the one that, or credible. I can't see that 25 tonne is feasible. Not in the short term. It might be in the long term, but you know, when we see that 68%, we think, where do we go wrong, and what can we do to improve it? So who knows? A lot of it will depend on plant varieties, improved yield, more disease resistant, etc., etc. So higher grain weights and all this sort of thing. So that's where some of the improvements got to come from.
Yeah, and potentially biologics. So we're looking at biologics and looking at our soil health and making sure that, you know, is this things that we can do there to help? Yes, we are looking at that. We're looking at biologic chemistry over the top of the crop as well. Is the potential there to help? You know, to be honest with you, that's what's so exciting about this sort of thing, is that we've got to think outside the square. We just can't keep doing what we've been doing because we'll stand still. So what we're trying to do is look for the next break, look for that next opportunity. We look all around the world. Eric's got a fantastic network of people and all around the world, and I've got the Bayer network of people all around the world, and we just keep looking at things and trying things.
Nice.
We're not there yet, Sean.
Fair.
And hopefully the Yield Enhancement Network will tell us one or two things as well. I mean, they come back with a great number of figures, you know, with what the crops used and what's been available in the store, etc., etc. So as far as phosphate, nitrogen, potash, and all those things, so that will help us make decisions as well, I think, and hopefully that will improve the results.
So Eric's just won the international yen that was run by the ADAS yen group in the UK. He's won the international entrant, and yeah, we've lifted that figure from 69.4 to 73.
Nice.
So I guess we're going in the right direction.
But
Yeah, I guess so.
And it wasn't a year that was good. The weather was absolutely awful. So, you know, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things on this farm also is our farm average, and that's Eric's judgment is the farm average for his wheat. So we look after all the other wheats on this farm the same as we do with the world record stuff. And, you know, one of the things we're trying to do is a farm average and get that farm average up over 16 tonne. And I think we're getting pretty close.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we constantly look at new varieties, and I think that's crucial as well. And what's coming through, you know, we look at what's available, and all our wheats are UK based breeding programs. So for our feed wheat, so we, you know, and a lot of those varieties do transfer here very well. Some of them don't. And we've tried new varieties direct from the UK. First year they've done extremely well. The second year they've been a total failure. So but a lot of it's done on trials here, so we know what's coming through. But I am a bit prone to trying some varieties quicker than what's available to the general public, and from some of the breeders, one of the breeders anyway. So
one of the benefits of being a world record holder is you do get access to things a little bit sooner. And, you know, even technology wise with fungicides, I mean, we've got some new chemistry that we've put into these crops this year with Vemor Ablon, which is Bayer's new SDHI. It's going to be interesting to see. That's a lot more persistent than anything else we've ever seen. So greener crops, that's what it's all about, keep the crop greener for longer. And, you know, we're the first country in the world to have Vemor, and part of that is because of Eric.
Nice.
We've proven to Bayer that, you know, this is the place to launch good chemistry. You know, big yields. That's what this is all about, feeding the world.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and congratulations on winning the world record.
Thank you. Thank you.
thanks, Sean.
Yes, we're watching as our participants come and join us, and so pleased to have David and Eric with us live and in person on a rainy day in New Zealand. As we experience winter here, it's midsummer there, and you know, I feel a bit like we've been covering a sports event. There's all that same analysis and you know, the kinds of things that we do for hockey over here that you do probably for football there, in terms of getting this goal met and winning this record. So we have had a number of questions that came through. Maybe some of them you did answer. We encourage people to ask their questions early, so some of them maybe you answered, but let's do a quick review on a couple of them. One of the questions was about your row spacing, that you were kind of going about 115 centimeters on your row spacing. Have you tried different, you know, lengths there on your row spacing? Is that 115 proven to be sort of the ideal, or what did you find when you were trying various rates there?
No, we haven't tried different row spacings. We do sow some other crops at wider row spacing, but the wheat seems for us to perform very well at 15 centimeters row spacing, and I think our ground and our soils and climate can take that. So we're virtually stuck with that row spacing.
Can't go any tighter, or
no, could go tighter, but it's just what the drills are manufactured. It's a European drill, and it's just what the seeder is manufactured at. And we could go wider. We could block off every alternative colder and go wider, but I don't think to us that there's any benefit. In fact, in some cases, I think it could be worse, because we could actually attract more weeds and also more virus because the aphids tend to like bare ground cover, especially earlier in the season. So I think that could be an issue if we went wider row spacing.
Okay, good. Now, I know that you sort of mentioned it, but maybe just do a quick review of what your seeding rate and your target plant population was. Some were asking about that.
Okay, so the record crop was sown at 70 kgs, I think. 73. 73 kgs. What we're trying to get to is we want somewhere around about, you know, 1,000 to 1,200 plants per square meter, and ears per square meter. So we want each plant to, you know, get as many tillers as we can. Our world record crop, we had 10 tillers per plant and 126 plants per square meter. So these are 1,260 tillers per square meter. This year, well, we've reduced the sowing rate, but we've got more tillers per square meter for some funny reason. We're sitting at sort of 1,560 this season. So tiller survival has been greater through the winter. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we don't know. We'll tell you in about 5 weeks.
I also think, you know, our winters are getting milder, and we don't tend to lose as many tillers as we used to. So, and I think that's why we keep cutting our sowing rate back a wee bit.
Yeah.
And then what about the total N amount and timing? That was another question. And when they're saying total N amount, that's soil capture plus what you add on to it. So just a quick review of those numbers for our farmers.
Well, we applied, I think it was 302 or 4 kilograms a hectare of actual nitrogen. We do these soil nitrogen tests, and then I think there's a number comes out, and we sort of divide it by about 60%, because a lot of it's not available, doesn't become available. So I think in total it's around about 340 to 350, including the soil test. But as I said in the presentation, I think it's the mineralisation that we don't know of, and that's a hard one. There are tests becoming available, or they're looking at those tests to see what becomes available during the season. So I think that, you know, we're very reliant on the mineralisation to take up the slack and the nitrogen we don't apply. So I think
that's good news that you're keeping it in the soil. And do you have a pretty strict rotation on that special field to get some nitrogen back into it?
No, we don't. It's just what our normal rotation follows. We generally have a rotation of wheat, which is followed by a ryegrass or a grass seed crop. And then we go into what we call a break crop, which could be like sort of pak joy or bok joy, or it could be spinach, sometimes faba beans. Well, this year we've got white clover. So it just depends on what what's previous and what the history of the paddock's been, because a lot of these vegetable seed crops we can't grow. We probably need 8 to 10 years between them in the rotation. So, and we are fortunate we do have a very good rotation, which helps build up our organic matter. It also helps hold our nitrogen through the season.
So organic matter is about 4%, isn't it?
Yes, 4 to 4.5%.
4 to 4.5, which is pretty amazing.
For continuous arable.
Yeah.
I know you've got our Farming Smarter researcher Ken Cole's all excited about trying bok choy here. He thinks that would be a big help here. Also, a question on your PGRs. I know you mentioned that you use 2 different ones, but with your split application, do you use 2 at the same time, or a different one each time? Tell us a little bit about the PGRs.
We use 2, so basically we're using Hormicot, which you guys are about to get, I think, or have, and we're using Modus here, which I think you guys call Palisade. We use, to be honest with you, we've used very robust rates, and the reason for that, we've played with 2 applications of split rates or 2 timings with half rates or whatever, and we see no difference. And what we've settled on is we just do the maximum rate twice. So the first one is a maximum rate of Hormicot, the second one is a maximum rate of your Modus or Palisade, and it's worked really, really well, and it goes across all varieties. So that's why we've done it. We've never seen any detrimental effect of that high rate, particularly when you're chasing these big yields.
We start around about growth stage 30, 31.
Yeah.
And then around about 14 days later, we just come in with the second one, regardless of the growth stage of the crop. So, and that's how we judge our PGR timing. It's and that's crucial to holding these crops, to keep them standing. We just cannot afford to have them lodged.
Yeah, every plant counts when you're going for a record.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Another question that came in is, how long is the grain fill period? What length of time is it?
It's very dependent on the variety, but between 3 to 5 weeks, depending on the variety. They are European types. They tend to be a little bit longer. The varieties we've got in this year, probably they're going to be a bit longer. They're probably more like 4 weeks. And I think the shortest one we've ever done is about 3 weeks. There you go.
And I guess
the longer it is, the better.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's, I was going to say, somewhat dependent on the weather too.
Yeah, very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We want a really long one right now because it's raining like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, that could impact. So you are going for another record attempt in this year, are you?
Are we? Well, we've eaten one, but I think the weather that we've had in the last 3 weeks has put paid to any extremely high yields. It's just we've had complete lack of sun. We haven't irrigated for nearly a month, which is very unusual for us in Canterbury. And our soils are becoming a bit waterlogged, which doesn't help our wheat crops or a lot of our crops. So I think there'll be no records this year unless we get a very warm period. We don't get any rain for about 6 weeks.
The thing about the Guinness thing is that you've got to be in, you've got to register the field, so you can't just decide that it's go. So what we've tended to do since 2015 is we register a challenge every year, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's expensive, you put across your €1,000, and you're entered. So we're committed. That's the way it works. And if you don't get it, it goes down the gurgler. So, that's the way it is. But then when you do get the record, then the money that you got to spend to actually get the record is prohibitive for an individual. But Bayer have been very understanding, and they see a lot of good in this because we're trying to feed the world and do it sustainably. So that's what we're trying to do.
And are there some other benefits as well from getting a world record? I mean, are you getting more attention in different ways, or does it open some other doors? What are some of the other benefits other than just, that quest?
It's an excellent question. Well, we get a lot of exposure. I mean, we've done, the stuff on YouTube we've done, if people want to have a look at the YouTube clips, go and just type in Eric Watson Weith. We'll pull most of those up, but huge amount of views from all over the world.
We've been involved with Ag PhD in South Dakota and Sioux Falls. We've been over there twice, had to speak there twice. I've had to go to Australia. Well, I couldn't go last year because of COVID, but yeah, I've done some sessions to Australia. So yeah, it has opened up, well, I don't say it's opened up a few doors. It's made a few speaking engagements in conferences, and I've had to do one for GRDC in Australia in February this year. So, and spoke in the UK a couple of times when I've been over there. So yeah, it has.
That's
It
great.
is. No, yeah.
One more call, last call for questions of this dynamic duo. So if you have any questions, type it up real quick. And maybe as I'm waiting to see if anything comes in, I will ask the ultimate sports question, not how fast we can run the 100 meters, but how high can you go?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult one. I originally said in the UK after the first record that 17 tonnes was achievable. I mean, we've passed 17. I now think 18 tonnes per hectare is achievable, maybe 20 tonnes. And I mean, if we look at my year-end report from ADAS, they say that we're only at 16 or 17 tonne, we're only about 68 to 70% of yield potential, but I think they've got the yield potential too high. So, I mean, there has been projects out here run by our research organisation to get 20 tonnes by 2020. That's not been achieved over a sort of a field scale or an area scale. It has been achieved on small plot trials, but yeah, I mean, we've achieved it. When you look at that yield meter, we've achieved it. So it is, yeah, I don't know where the limit is, to be honest. And I think
we're not there yet.
No, I think
That's the fun. Yeah, exactly.
I just think the yield keeps increasing. I think the potential keeps increasing.
Yeah. All right, I did get one last question. Nathan snuck one question in under the wire, and so we will delay our next presentation just by a couple of minutes because this is a good one. So again, our next presentation will start just a couple minutes later, so don't worry about missing it. But Nathan is asking, do you tank mix your herbicides and PGR? And on your second PGR, do you add in a fungicide? So just a little bit about the process there.
Okay, so no, we don't mix herbicides and PGRs. We are very careful with tank mixing because the crop is sacred. We don't want to scorch or burn it or set it back. So our herbicide programs are well and truly done by the time we get to PGR. PGRs go on by themselves. The first one goes on by itself. The second one will go in with our T1 fungicide. So yes, it's mixed with the T1. But yeah, we're very careful with, particularly when the flag leaf's out, we are incredibly conscious of not wanting to scorch anything. So we tend to, look at maybe two-way mixes, potentially three-way, but you never look at a four-way mix or a, multiple mix of, foliar feeds and herbicides and fungicides and insecticides. You just wouldn't do it. Flag leaf is contributing to 45% of the yield. It's the big engine, it's the big solar panel. So the last thing we want to do is damage it.
And there's no nitrogen is applied solely on its own. We will not mix anything with our not liquid nitrogen. We just cannot afford it. But even this year, we did have some scorching with PGRs due to the weather conditions and late frosts and just the weather conditions at the time. So, and some varieties seem to be a bit more susceptible to scorching than others. So
it does mean that Eric's across these fields, 13, 14 times. And I know most people in Canada will look at that and go, what are you doing? But that's the way it is. And
you must have tram lines.
Oh yes.
At 48 metres.
So 48 metre sprayer and tram lines. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, certainly fun and interesting, and also, of course, learning a lot as we go. So thank you for sharing your great journey with us. And again, there is the QR code for anyone looking to get their CCA credits out of from this session. And thank you to you both. I hope the sun starts shining for you down there. And the rain stops. Could be worse. It could be -20. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Thank
Have a
you
good
so
Christmas.
much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you.
It's been so great to have David Weith and Eric Watson with us, and we wish them all the best in their future record attempts. Remember, you can always Google Eric Watson's wheat and catch up on their attempts. We will send you back to the main platform now as we carry on with our next session.